Alright, in the last video we looked at measures of dispersion, and we looked at the formulas by hand for range and standard deviation. So in this video we are going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with Excel. Alright, let's look at the US President's one that we did both of our data sets on. And I'm going to throw that into Excel. We got 69 to 64 just like last time. So I'm going to throw those in. Now this is already sorted just like before. So I can tell this is the maximum, this is the minimum. So for a range, I could just click maximum minus minimum if it's already sorted like that, and there's my range that we found. But another way to do it, if let's say it wasn't in order like this, let's say that they gave it to us, I'm going to do the 65 first, then a 64, the 69, another 64, and a 68. So it's not sorted. So there's two things I could do. I could do like we did in the other video when we did like median, and I could go over here to sort, and I could tell it sort from smallest to largest after I notice I've highlighted that column. I can click sort that from smallest to largest. Okay, that's one thing I could do. And then I could do like I did last time. Just this is now the largest, this is the smallest. But the other thing I could do is just down here in the box below my data set, like equals. Remember, equals is what we type when we're wanting to do math. And then the range is just the highest minus the smallest. So you can just type in maximum or max of these numbers. Alright, close that, minus the minimum of these numbers. And there's your range. Alright, so the range is 5. There is no range command between the data sets like there was for median and the last one. So you just have to use maximum minus minimum. But it's fairly easy, especially if the data is already sorted for you. It's definitely easy. Alright, standard deviation. Yes, it is easy. There is a formula for it. But I do want you to be able to do it by hand. So earlier, when you did it by hand, in the last one, you saw, or in the notes, if you wrote down the notes, you saw that we took the values, found the mean of 66, subtracted that, got these negative numbers. This is just notice, you don't have to use this. This is just notice that the sum of the deviations is always 0. And you can't divide 0 or do anything with 0. You're always going to get 0. So we square the deviations to get positive numbers. And then when we add all those up, we don't have the negatives to cancel with it. So we get something to work with. And then we divide by n minus 1, right, which gives us 4. And then that's our variance. We just take the square root of variance, and that's our standard deviation. All right, now, this is what I want you to see. This already looks like Excel. I mean, you could even copy this sheet into Excel because it's got that spreadsheet look to it. Delete that just so you can see all those values could go in there. There's this little, let's see if it'll pop up. This little control thing, this paste option, will let me paste it in as matching the data set. Anyway, I can see the numbers themselves. I can see the original data set because that format that it gave it to us was very much like a spreadsheet format. Okay. Anyway, there's our original data set. So I'm going to do the same thing that we had here. This had the data sorted from largest to smallest. So I'm going to start off doing that just to get the data set that it had. It's not required at all, but I'm just getting it the way it looked from the original. Okay, let me blow this up so you can see a little better. So the first thing we want to do, remember, is find the mean. So right down below this, I'm going to find the mean. So remember, you can do one of two things. You can highlight the data, go to this summation formula, down arrow, average. All right, there's our 66. Or the other thing is you can literally type in equals average and select your data if you wanted to do that. So equals, start typing in average, there's average, highlight your data, there. All right, there's 66. Now, right here beside it, let me insert, right here, I'm going to insert another row. I'm just going to say this is values. Alright, this is, the next column is going to be deviations, just like it was in this the slide deviation. Alright, in this last column we got squared deviations. So remember, the deviations were the measurements or the values minus the mean. This is the mean down here, right, in this last cell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type equals. I'm just going to click a measurement. So 64 is a measurement, and I'm going to subtract the mean. Okay, so there's the mean. I clicked on the 66. Now, you have to do something in addition to that, because we're going to drag down like we did before. You have to make sure to press the F4 button on your keyboard, and that will lock in the 66 cell to always be what we subtract. If we don't, when we drag down to go to the next 64, it's going to subtract the next thing down from 66, which is blank. When you drag down in Excel, it drags down everything that's labeled with a cell to the next one below it. So A2 gets dragged down to A3, the 64. A7 would get dragged down to A8, which is blank. But putting the dollar signs around it or hitting the F4 key after you've clicked it will lock it into where we always subtract the same thing. Alright, there's a lot of formulas where we want to subtract the same thing or add, square, whatever. But to lock that in, we have to press the F4 button. If you have a touch screen or something like that where you don't have an F4 button on your keyboard that pops up, you can just type in the dollar signs around the letter part of the cell name. Alright, and then once I hit that enter, I click that and I drag down to the last measurement. Alright, and it does deviations for all these. I just realized I sorted it smallest to largest. But same thing would work if you did largest to smallest. So it would just be 3, 2, -1, -2, -2. Alright, the next column is the square deviations. And just like it was here, we square whatever the number was over here. Right? And the way you do that with Excel is simply just equals, and then you click the previous cell, right? And then you use Shift 6 for the power, and then 2 for the square. Right, and then you just go all the way down. Once again, highlight that corner. Notice what I'm doing there. Just highlighting making my cursor go from white to black when I highlight the green corner in the bottom right corner. And then now it's squared the previous cell's deviations. Okay, now notice that's still highlighted because I drug it down. It's all still highlighted, and that's good because the next step, remember, is to add all that up. Right, after we've squared the deviations, we add them all up. So since I've got it all highlighted in Excel, I can just pop the sum button, and it'll add all those things up for me. So there's the sum of the squared deviations. So there is the same thing I got right there. And then the next step, remember, is to divide by one less than the sample size. So we're dividing by one less than how many data items we have. Now, over here to the side, I'll just go one beside that. I'll click equals. Click this thing is what I'm going to divide with 22, and I click that, and now I divide by. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can literally just count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. Just doing your head because it's just subtracting 1. But if there's a big number of data values, you can omit this top row here and just notice the left-hand side is counting them for you, and just look what your last number was. But you can also use the count feature, but you have to use a parentheses. That's why I don't recommend this necessarily, but you could do count and open the parentheses, highlight the data, close that, and then -1. Alright. And that's count is the same thing as n. So n minus 1. There's that 5.5 again. Okay. But it'd be perfectly fine there if you just did equals, click this, and then I know I have 5 data points, so I just divide by 4. Alright, so there's the 5.5, and then remember the last step after we got that was to take the square root. In Excel, square root is the command equals SQRT, square root. So double click that, click the number, and enter. So there's that value, and then If they tell you to round it, remember you can do equals round, and then click the previous cell, and then tell it how many places. So we'll round it to 2, 3, whatever. It'll round it for me. Alright, so there is the shortcut command for standard deviation, and we already did the shortcut command for range. Just so you can see, there's an even shorter shortcut command for standard deviation. Equals, start typing standard deviation, and this is the standard deviation. This is the sample standard deviation formula. There's something called a population standard deviation formula, where basically all we do differently is we don't divide by n-1, we divide by n at that step. And that's the difference between the two formulas. But the standard deviation for a sample, I click that, highlight the data, just the data, and then enter. And there's that same number. And this is the standard deviation, this is the rounded standard deviation. Notice that's giving me the same thing that we got doing all those different steps. So that's the shortcut in Excel. But just know that you can create these same types of sheets that we saw in the notes very easily with Excel. I mean, like we said, this actually looks like Excel behaves. It does everything in columns. It has the sum features. So the standard deviation formula is very user-friendly and easy to do with Excel. But because there's a shortcut command that's even user-friendly and even easier, then it even appears to be. You know, we can get to it in just a simple one function command.